All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Camp Content. I'm excited today about our guest because this conversation hits home for me, and I'm really excited about what these two amazing women are doing, and I think you will be too. If you're a professional woman feeling burnt out and seeking career transformation, this just might be the right episode for you today. So, we are welcoming Emma and Yaz from Conscious Success. They are master coaches specializing in helping women like you find and fulfill their true purpose while achieving financial success. Emma and Emma. Yaz and Emma have both navigated from high pressure roles to careers that bring them joy and satisfaction. Yaz transformed her career from being the youngest director at a top global advertising agency to becoming a master coach and design director at a Fortune 500 company. Meanwhile, Emma transitioned from a high earning tech executive to a fulfilling life as a twin mom and coach after overcoming clinical burnout. Together, they have developed a conscious success method, which combines mindset, somatic practices, and strategic planning to help women craft not just successful, but deeply fulfilling careers. Man, put those two things in a sentence: successful and deeply fulfilling. So without further ado, ladies, welcome to the show today. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Molly.
much for having us, Molly.
Absolutely, absolutely. From the time that I met you guys, I was really impressed with just how well spoken and passionate you are about your business. And it just shows that you have a lot of experience in the corporate world. You have a lot of experience with these topics, and you have a lot of experience overcoming them yourself and with other women. So I'm really thrilled to have you both here today to share some of this message, especially now we're entering into a new era, hopefully, of a lot of successful and deeply fulfilled women in the world. So what a better way to usher this whole era in, but with the youth. I consider you guys the youth because I'm technically
We
old.
love that, Molly. Thank you. What a
I'm glad. I'm
compliment.
turning 35 in 2 months, so I don't feel like the youth anymore, but I'm so glad to be referred to as that here.
Listen, take it while you can, because you hit
Yeah,
48.
really.
It's all downhill. I'm like, I have hips that hurt and knees. Who told? Nobody told me about this. Well, listen, let's get right into it. I think I want to really chat about burnout. I know the world has really changed in the last couple of years. Women really took a hit in the professional world with the pandemic. We were the first ones to give up our jobs. We were the first ones to be super stretched thin, and burnout is a real thing. In addition to all the other issues that face women in the corporate, universe, if you will, before the pandemic and before all of this. So, like, how are women, feeling? Why are they feeling so overwhelmed and burned out? And what is your mission to help fix that?
Yeah, thanks, Molly, and we're so happy to be here, so thank you so much. So yeah, burnout has kind of reached epidemic levels, right? Probably most of the people listening right now would at some level identify with the feeling of burnout. But I think it's deeply misunderstood in our culture. And truly until I hit clinical burnout and did this work, I had no idea how to actually address it. So we hear about what causes burnout. It's like workload and not taking enough time off and always being online and the stress of the world and the pandemic and childcare and all of that. And yes, and we're missing the whole and, right? And the other side of that is really the work that Yaz and I focus on at Conscious Success, which is really at the mind, body, and energetic levels to work with the nervous system to clear out all the junk that is making you feel tense and stressed and dysregulated. We don't have mechanisms in our society to actually clear that out. So we just repress and suppress and we add on and we're operating from these like frenetic panic states all the time. And at our core, we're still animals, right? We're not that far away from being in hunter gatherer tribes. We weren't evolved to have the constant onslaught of pings and information and technology. We weren't evolved to know what's going on in the world of billions of people. We were evolved for a tribe of 50, right? And so all of this is combining where just moving through our world is enough to burn us out, right? Much less add on a stressful career or childcare responsibilities or trying to, run your own business. So we really focus on what's the missing piece. How do we actually help people to regulate their nervous system so that they can at least take control of the part that they are in control of and release control of the part that, look, this is the world that we live in, but how do we equip ourselves and resource ourselves to be able to function in a way that's not going to burn us out?
Amen. Yeah. I mean, there's, with TikTok and everything, you can diagnose yourself with a million things, and Instagram, right? But then it's like, well, what's the solution? What, like, everybody wants a diagnosis, but what's the solution? What do we do with all this? Um, so yes, let's talk a little bit about your transition, right? And what led you to the conscious success and making that choice yourself, to leave something, so good and and blaze your own path. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, well, spoiler, burnout is definitely a significant part of my journey. I think, something that we teach in our conscious success method is where the come from of your career is. Is it coming from a place of like true desire and sourced from yourself, or is it coming from a place of fear and shoulds? And I think my career path, and particularly my kind of like rapid ascent in the advertising world, was definitely coming from a place of striving for safety. So, without
Mm.
going into the long version of the story, in my childhood, there was a lot of financial insecurity, housing insecurity. And I came from a background where my parents hadn't had typical professional jobs or been to university. And so I thought my one mission was to do the opposite and to get safe, to get the best education I could. I went to Oxford University, did the classic kind of conventional success path. And then I still had a creative whisper. So I really wanted to try and combine that, which is why I went into advertising. And look, there are many wonderful creative experiences to be had in that field. I was so driven by this kind of like the next promotion, the next promotion, the next paycheck, the next paycheck, that actually all the passion and the creativity that was in that career for me was kind of squashed underneath that pressure. And ultimately, that patterning that was within me led to a burnout. And I spent much time after that trying to figure out, and I think I was in this spot that many of our women we work with are in, which is like, the current model of what I'm doing is not working, but I don't know another way out because I've reached X level of income, I've reached X level of external validation, but I'm really, really struggling. And like Emma, I got to a place of clinical burnout. Went there, I think, twice or three times before I really realized something had to change. And then eventually I found this kind of work that Emma and I do. So I got my own coach. I started to actually understand kind of what was driving me to show up in the way I was in my career. And only then was I actually able to, I moved jobs a couple of times in that time, but just changing jobs wasn't changing any of the internal world for me. And it was only once I addressed that, then I was able to be like, oh, actually, I want to tap into tons of my gifts that aren't necessarily, being able to be expressed in my advertising career, my emotional sensitivity and all these kind of things. And ultimately that led me down the path of having a portfolio career, of tapping into my creativity with design still, and also that more emotional side with our coaching work that we do.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's an easy trap. To be successful in the corporate world, you have to be tougher. You have to hone in on things that might not really serve you, right? And that's the only way that you're going to survive, because it's survival of the fittest, especially as a woman, because we're not competing for a seat, we're competing for the seat,
Yeah.
and then so there's this constant pressure and like ignoring of your true self until one day you wake up and you don't even recognize who you are anymore. And it's not necessarily all bad. You didn't turn into like the evil Grinch or anything, but maybe you're just not who you want to be, and you don't even realize how it happened. And you just feel so disconnected because you're like, wait a minute, this is success. Like, I've made it and I've never been more miserable in my life. And I have no idea who I am, because we're trying to fit into this world, right? And everybody keeps telling us you have imposter syndrome. Like, we need another freaking diagnosis. Like, no, man, when we're trying to survive in a world that's not that has not been crafted for us in a very long
Yes.
time.
Yes. I love that so much. The phrase imposter syndrome really gets my bugbear, because I
I
completely
hate
agree.
it.
It is the presence in a world that wasn't necessarily like designed for you. And the fact that like so many of our role models, like certainly in my journey, like the only role models I saw were very senior, non-emotional men. And so I constantly felt like I wasn't good enough
Right.
because I was sensitive, I was emotional, I was
Right.
creative, all of the things that I wasn't seeing. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I also totally agree, Molly. And so much of what causes that stress and makes us go into survival mode is seeing what is the archetype, what's the ideal, who are we supposed to be? And the further from that model that we innately are, the more stress that puts on our system internally because we're hardwired to belong, right? To belong to a
Hmm.
tribe. And so when the model that we see isn't who we innately are, we try to contort and shapeshift and be someone that we're not. That creates an incredible amount of effort that we put forward and stress on our nervous system. That's not easeful, right? That's effortful. And so much of this work is how do we get back to that ease? How do we actually move away from thinking like, oh, I need to be non-emotional corporate man? How do I actually lean into my feminine leadership? How do I bring online my zone of genius and my gifts? And how do I lead from there in a place that can be impactful and also totally break open the model of what we conventionally think of as successful, and that's conscious success, right? And we really believe that it is possible, both in and out of corporate, to lead in a different way. And I think we're really ready for that. Like, I think people, especially after COVID, are like, the old model ain't working. Like, we're not signing up for that anymore. So, what is the new normal? And that's really the vision we're trying to bring forward with conscious success, right? And I think that it is possible to create a corporate career or creative career or an entrepreneurial career, whatever you want, from a place of what we call creator mode versus survival mode. And all of us are done with the survival mode.
I love it. I think, it kind of reminds me of like the girl boss era and hustle culture too. It feels like, redefining feminine leadership, right? Is what that's all about, and I struggle with that sometimes with the women's business communities or, the you are enough and the imposter syndrome, right? It's like, well, hang on, man. You know what I mean? Like we have to redefine how we do everything. I went to a convention recently, the International Telecoms convention at the big convention center, and there was no swag bags, there was no crap on the tables. Every single booth had an office with a table with 5 chairs around it, and more deals were done on that convention room floor, and it looked like nobody was there all week because they were all inside those offices closing deals. And it's like, yeah, why not? Let's get more intentional about things instead of just checking these boxes and showing up and handing out stuff that's just going to fill up lamp and just doing the same old, the same old, the same old, the same old. That's also not even working for anybody else. So why is it expected to work for us? So in your mind, like what is feminine leadership? What is that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing because we have to be really careful with the phrase feminine leadership that it doesn't become another version of something we compare ourselves against that we're then not able to be. But I think
Amen.
feminine leadership is really, I guess, leaning into what your true nature and qualities are, as Emma said, like your zones of genius, which, like, let's not kind of lie about it. Like, there are some elements of similarity between, women who identify with more of a feminine style that kind of unite us, but those do get to look slightly different for kind of, there's not one archetype of what feminine leadership is, but it's leaning into a way of working that truly is in line with your true nature and your true gifts. And there's so many aspects to this, but one aspect is that, just to your point earlier, Molly, of the fact that, like, the working world wasn't designed for women. The working world is based around 24-hour cycles, which is actually like the testosterone cycle of men, versus the female cycle, which is a 28-day give or take. Everyone's cycle is slightly different. And this is whether you actually still have an active cycle or you don't. Like, women are cyclical beings. And we go through seasons where sometimes we're in like a spring season where we're like building and blooming, and then we experience a summer where we get to enjoy that, and then things wilt away and we're in a winter and we're in a difficult period. And like, all of that kind of model of allowing for like rest in order to create productivity rather than just productive every single day, every single day, every single day. There's lots of those kind of things that are just imprinted, and like, I guess we just go along with that's the way that work is today, whereas that's not actually necessarily true to our being. And it's actually amazing when you look back in history. There's a great book called Do Less, and she talks about a study in that book, Kate Northrup. She talks about a study that actually they showed that in history, when women were together in villages, they used to perfectly be in sync with their menstrual cycle, so that half of the village could take half of the month off while the other half did the work, and vice versa, and they'd oscillate. And that used to be how things were done when there was a more, I guess, feminine centric way in that kind of context. But yeah, I think, there's so many aspects to this. There's also things like, really owning your boundaries to protect that kind of energy. There's also leaning into the innate qualities that often are more feminine, like sensitivity, like emotional intelligence, like collaboration, all of these wonderful traits that sometimes aren't typically built into workplace culture, that women excel at.
Yes, and I would just add also on that point, our current, working culture is kind of the masculine leadership, right? And a lot of that is the healthy masculine, and we all have masculine and feminine energetics within us, right? But our culture has been created just from the masculine energetic, both the healthy and the toxic part of that, right? And when we talk about feminine leadership, it doesn't even mean you need to be a female, but let's counterbalance. Let's have the equilibrium of the feminine leadership, the healthy feminine, alongside the healthy masculine, because that's how we're going to create the most potent, easeful, transformative work, right? And the thing is it's almost like a seesaw. We're so off balance. We're only prioritizing the masculine. When we say that, the healthy masculine are things like um, analysis, linear thinking, doing, action orientation, structure, boundaries. And we love that. We're about that, right? But we get to counterbalance it with the creativity, with the intuition, with the collaboration, with all of the vision. Like that's what the feminine brings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And individually, whether you're male bodied or female bodied, can hopefully do that in the cycle that works best for you. So if you're a man, maybe you want to wake up every day and you want to work a certain number of hours in a linear fashion, right? Great. And if you're a woman, how can you work with your cycle, with your energy, so that you can have the maximum amount of impact? And if we look in 30 days time, maybe it looks a little bit different for a woman, but we're both having massive contribution.
What are the results? Exactly. So let's talk about conscious success, right? Because we've talked a lot about the conscious. Now let's talk about success. Because one of the things that really interested me in the work that you're doing when we first met is this program that you have and how you work through that. But then you say, okay, now let's set up a business that let's get you onto the road to success as well. And I think that's probably what I feel like is missing from a lot, right? Because I'm super down with the you are enough, but like let's do that after we close the deal, like at the bar or at the like a massage center or something, right? Like let's focus on let's make some money together, and then we can talk about how enough we are, right? So I really appreciate that you have built in this business model to help people get to the next level, because you can feel super whole, but if you can't pay your rent and you're not living, then none of that really matters, right? You can't yoga retreat your life into a better financial
Well,
situation.
I think it's another case of a yes and. Like, we don't believe that you can actually have the maximum success and impact if you're doing that from your conventional unconscious self versus from your conscious self that's
Right.
fully online with all of your gifts.
Right.
So we're not here for the like you are enough just to like have this trope and love yourself. It's like, no, actually do the work to
Right.
connect with and bring your gifts online, because that's when you can truly thrive and create that success. So we do think that's a precursor, and it's kind of like the visual of like you kind of have to come down one peak of a mountain and you enter a valley, and in that peak you or in that trough you figure out who the hell you are, right? And then you scale the next mountain to actual conscious success. But we're not just stopping in that valley and being like, "Oh, you're connected to yourself and you are enough." No, now let's take that self out there in the world and have your impact, fulfill your purpose, make your contribution. And like you said at the beginning of this podcast, we need more women who are fully online, right? We need that. Our society deeply needs our gifts. So that's really where we then bring back in that action orientation. It's like once you've clarified the vision of what's truly aligned for you and the impact you're meant to have, great. Now, how do we create the systems and the frameworks and the accountability and the action so that you continue to work through whatever comes up and continue to put things forward so that you don't sit in in the thinking about it forever, but you get into the doing.
The doing. So let's get into a little bit about like the actual program. Like what does it consist of? Who is it aimed at? Like I'm sure some women are listening to this and thinking, okay, this is ringing some bells here. So let's get into the weeds a little bit on what is the program? How do people join? How long is it? All of the good stuff.
Yeah, I think probably the best way for us to answer this is that we have a 5-step model. So it's our 5 steps to conscious success. And currently we work mostly with women one-to-one on this. And we're launching our first program in the new year in 2025, which is very exciting. But the framework through which we help women go from conventional to conscious success always revolves around our 5-step process. So step 1 is all around clear the fear. And that's really about like truly seeing your map of conditioning and your come from that may not have been from desire, but may have been from fear in your career. And as Emma mentioned earlier, getting down to that nervous system level of working on that at a very deep level so that you can then the second step, which is connect back to your, and Emma, you weigh in if I miss some of these steps because we've rephrased them a few times. But the second step, which is actually connecting back to your true self,
Your purpose. Yeah.
your purpose. Sorry, yeah. So connecting back to your, maybe I'll just go back one there. So then the second step, which is all around connecting to your true self and your purpose. So really here it's about sourcing that success from internally. So who you truly are underneath all of those layers, those shoulds, who you truly are, what your true gifts are, and then getting very practical with that of like not just who is your true conscious self, but actually how can that manifest in the world in a way that you can have, the things that you desire and have those external things as well. And then step 3 is co-create with easeful action. And this is all about, then once you have this kind of vision of what it is you want to go after, actually taking aligned action on that. So not going into like hustle, boss babe culture, but from a place of ease, actually being able to take the action on that. A big part of that is step 4, which is having a clear transition plan. So, once you kind of have what your idea of your purpose is, you're able to kind of take action from an easeful place. You're actually kind of following a clear plan as to where you want to get to. Because I think a big gap that we saw in the market was the fact that like no one was actually helping women truly make that leap from where they are in their career now and where they desire to be in a tangible place. And then the 5th step is all around commit to empowerment. So this is all around the fact that like once you do get on the path of building a big vision, your detractors are going to come up. The parts of you that are scared are going to come up. And we really support women to continually step into the what we call empowerment triangle, which is like, coaching yourself, being in that creator mode, like allowing yourself to actually continue to move forwards from an empowered place to bring that vision to life.
Amazing. And how long is the program?
So we're currently,
So right
yeah, go
now,
ahead. Emma.
So right now, as Yaz mentioned, we're still just doing one-on-one coaching. In the new year, we're going to be launching this program. So the details are still being finalized. But if you want to be in this world, the best thing to do would be to go to our Instagram, which is Conscious Success Co. And from there, you can follow us. You can take our quiz. We have a quiz called Unblock Your Purpose. And so it helps you figure out what are your biggest career blocks at the moment that are going to keep you from conscious success. So you can take that quiz. It comes with a personalized assessment that's pages long that gives you lots of juicy insights that you can put into action tomorrow. And then you'll be subscribed to hear about our program as we launch it. So that's really the best way to find us and begin to do this work.
Amazing. Well, that was super thorough. So, and all the links will be in the show notes, so people can click on those if they're watching or listening to this, wherever they may be. Those notes will be there as well. All right. So, I have another question for you. What is the most rewarding part of coaching women through their transformation? And you can both answer that individually.
So we think about conscious success as a continuum, right? So on the far left, it's totally gripped by and driven by fear. And on the far right, it's a life and a career that you've really consciously designed by desire. And so for me, it's watching women come in on that far left of like so burnt out, so depleted. The light is like all but out in their eyes. They want to escape their careers, but they feel totally stuck. And watching as they come back to life, and then not only come back to life, but are now pulled forward by desire, and they don't have the Sunday scaries because they're actually feeling like they're making a meaningful contribution in the world, and they're doing so in an easeful, aligned way. And watching that and then getting to see the gifts that they offer our world and watching our clients launch businesses and transform lives, like there could be no greater you know work, I think. And it's having this multiplier effect. Everyone we work with, we then get to see as they put their work out in the world. So that's what keeps me going every day. And I just never get enough of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think on a similar thread, like for me, it's really helping people come back to their true self. Like it is the most beautiful thing. And often, like the roots of those true selves are in those younger versions of us and like the parts of us that got lost along the way that are like the purest versions of us, the most expansive versions of us. And I think the joyful thing is then that you actually allow people to realize all of those dreams that they had when they were younger, but often in a completely different form to what they thought that it would be, but in the same characteristics. So Emma and I talk a lot about kind of how we are now living our 5, 6, 7-year-old's dream in a completely different form than what we thought it would take, but like highlighting all of those things we always wanted to do. So like I always wanted to be a TV presenter or a radio presenter. That was what I always wanted to do. Now I get to be on podcasts like this amazing podcast with you, Molly. We get to present when we teach our course content and all of these kind of things. And Emma, maybe you can weigh in with what your kind of younger dreams were and like how that manifests. But we talk about this feeling a lot and seeing that like in our clients and seeing them actually doing the damn thing and being able to realize it is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, I wanted to be like a somebody who you'd write in and ask questions about how to like solve the problems in your life. I didn't have the concept of a coach at that point, right? I was like,
Like,
maybe there'll be an advice columnist. And it's crazy when, yeah, your career takes a different iteration, but the same key points that you've always been driven and motivated by and always lit up by, when you're on purpose, when you're on path, those get to come to life. And yeah, Yaz and I pinch ourselves literally every day. This gets to be our career. And watching more and more women be able to step into that too is just
right on. Well, I'm very glad that the world has you, especially younger women in their professional journeys, because there's just not a lot of support. I think there's more support for your generation than there was mine, and it's getting better constantly, but it's still just embedded in us, to not do what we want and not what fills our cup. And, there's just a lot of things that need to change. And so it's really nice to see successful professional women leading the charge to say, hey, this is okay. And this is the new era we're entering into, because life moves
and
fast, Go ahead.
yeah, and Molly, our generation has, stands on the shoulders of your generation, right? And like that's how it goes with every generation. And so and the ones before you, right? So the fact
For
that
sure.
at one point just being able to be the one woman in a room, we are fighting with each other to do that. And now I think we've largely moved beyond that. But now it's like, oh great, how do we actually move to this collaboration and to changing the systemic issues and to bringing forth a new like power of women and the creativity and what we have to offer in a abundance focus versus scarcity focus model. And I think we're doing that and we're ready. So we're so grateful for all the work that has come before us to allow us to have this small piece.
Well, and I feel like you guys are the next step, because even though it's a tricky thing, like we're so pitted against one another, right? And like this scarcity mindset, like it just seeps into other things, even vendor to vendor. And like women don't even realize they're doing it to other women, right? And sometimes the harshest critics in business are other women. And you're like, hey man, you can take the gloves off now. Like, you know what I mean? We're on the same team here. And that's like a generational thing that'll just have to come out in the wash, my parents and their parents, I mean, they couldn't even have their own checking account, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until like 3
Mhm.
years before I was born, right? And
So
so like
crazy.
my mom had a lot of resentment towards me because of my independence, and she didn't
Mhm,
even realize it, right? So there's a
mhm.
lot of things that like are,
Unconscious.
yeah. And so, I think just speaking about these things like really helps, and leading by example helps, because it's not about
Mhm.
berating women. It's just saying like, hey, there's another option, right?
And I will
There's
just add to that, Molly, Yaz and I both had our individual coaching businesses before we joined forces to build conscious success together. And it would have been so easy to see each other as the competition, right?
right.
Like, oh, well, we both serve the same type of woman, and I'm gonna hold all the information close to my chest because I don't want you to steal my clients. And instead, what we came to through our collaboration, our openness was, oh my gosh, we can build such a bigger vision and execute on that
Exactly.
together than we
Yeah.
can do alone. And that has allowed our business to feel as good as it does. And so there's such an opportunity to change that programming and turn it on its head. And on the other side of that is something that we actually genuinely want that feels good too.
Totally. And I
I
think
love
it
it.
then attracts like attracts like Emma and I just a couple of weeks ago were at a retreat with lots of our peers who are also in very similar space to us. And the entire culture there was, how can I support you? Like, I'd love to come and
Right.
like support in your program, or like, I'd love to have you on my podcast, or I'd love to. And it's just like when you get into that zone, actually the abundance, the fear is scarcity, and actually the abundance that comes when you have that openness is just so beautiful.
I agree. I love it. I really do. I think it's amazing. I think, it took, I did something similar a few years ago. I closed a company I had for 20 some odd years. And I just, this voice in my head that was like, you don't have to do this anymore. And I had all this
Yeah.
pressure and all these employees, but I was miserable and I was pouring from an empty cup and nobody noticed. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I Marie Kondoed and reverse Oprah'd my life. So I got rid of everything that didn't bring me joy. And then I was like, you got to go and you got to go. And I'm not responsible for anybody. And it was great. And it was the best thing I ever did. And then I just really thought about, what do I want to do? What brings me joy? And it's being behind the camera. It's being behind the producer. It's connecting people. It's having conversations with people. It's, spreading a message. And so here I am now. I'm not saying I got it all figured out, right? But I'm living in Costa Rica doing what I love versus being in DC thinking about riding my bike in front of the next truck that drove by me, to a point that it was very concerning because I was so, 160 artists, 3-story building. I mean, you want to talk about overachiever, right? And when I closed that company, everybody thought I was crazy, but I couldn't do it anymore. It was the
Yeah.
company or it was me. And so,
Molly, you just described conscious success. Like, that's it. The voice inside that's like, no more. And how
Yeah.
many times did you override that voice before you listened, right? Countless, right? That voice was
countless.
always there and it was always talking to you and it was always guiding you. But there was this other conventional success voice that was like, no, but you have to. No, this is what success looks like. Why, yada, yada, yada. But you listened, you stopped, you redesigned your life from what you truly desired and what truly felt good and what your genius and your gifts are and what you wanted to do. And now look at you living in Costa Rica and doing the things that actually give you energy and give you life and have a bigger impact. So, like, you're such a perfect story. And that's so inspiring to hear you articulate it. And I know you wouldn't have used the words that we do now at the time, but you're a walking, living example of what that looks like.
Totally.
Well,
And
thank you, but I almost didn't make it, and so it's important to
mm,
share that story, right? Because a lot of people looked at
yeah.
me and thought I had it all figured out and I was super successful. And it was like, man, that couldn't have been the furthest from the truth. It wasn't true at all. What
Yeah.
does success mean to you? Right? People
Mhm.
define that differently.
Totally. And
Um,
it's interesting because we talk about, we obviously focus very specifically on career. And it's like career is so central to like how you feel and the rest of your life. And like to your point there, it's like, that nearly took you. It has that level of power. And like when we do shift into alignment, it has the opposite power where it has the ability to regenerate your whole entire life and support it rather than actually being the possibility to destroy it. And it's like we spend a third of our entire lives at work and working.
shit,
A third.
shit, half. Okay,
Yeah.
over
Exactly.
here,
Third
maybe
Exactly.
more.
conservative
Look
of
at
I
you.
don't have kids, so
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, it really, it's such an apex of like how we feel in our lives. And to your point of like the absolute power it can to either destroy you as a person or generate your whole life and create something totally beautiful.
anything is possible. In fact, everything is possible, right?
Exactly.
You know,
It
all you
totally
need is
is.
unwavering confidence and a side of delusion, and you can do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what you got
And well,
to
we call that co-creating with the universe, right? It's like you have to meet action with intention, right?
Mm,
So it's like, okay, this is where I want to go. And now I take action. But from what I can't control, I'm going to release control. And then the universe is going to give me things to dance with and to play with and to overcome and to learn. And if we adopt that like commit to empowerment mentality, we see everything is happening for us, not to us. And every challenge we experience in our business is redirecting us and pointing us to something that we can improve or operationalize or systematize or make better or see new opportunity, right? If we choose to see it as such. And so that's just such a shift. And then it's like, great, let's dance, right? That's what is so fun to get to that place where everything that happens. Yaz and I recently had a brand photo shoot, and our stylist pulled out like the week before our shoot. And we could have been like, oh my God, see, everything's going wrong and this is going to be a disaster. And we're like, okay, universe, like, let's dance. Right.
Yeah,
And we got another stylist, and she was so much better than the first
of
one. And we had
course.
this amazing shoot, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
So when you see it like that, it's like, okay, great. And now we flow.
Exactly. And those photos are fantastic. I could say that confidently. I've seen them. They're amazing. All right, ladies. Well, we have taken enough of your time today, but before we go, I would like you to let everybody know, like, where's the best place? I know they have all the links, but a final message. Yeah, don't give them links. We got all that in the show notes. What's your final message to anybody listening today that's been moved by this content? No pressure.
I would just say that, to what we just spoke about, Molly, that voice inside that was telling you like, this ain't it. Like, so much of the stress and dysregulation and overwhelm and burnout that we're feeling in our lives is because we're hearing that voice and we're trying to override it. And the quicker we can just submit and surrender and say, okay, I'm listening. What now? Then we can rebuild our lives from a place of desire and love and alignment and energy and aliveness. And so that voice, that light, it never fully goes out. And I'm so glad that you caught it when you did. But if to anyone listening right now, they know that that voice has been speaking to them, but they don't know how to make those shifts alone, come join us at Conscious Success, and we have everything that you need to get to the other side of that mountain.
Yeah, totally. And I think the thing I'd build to that is, like, we talk so much about like not settling in relationship and in other areas of our life, but we don't talk enough about not settling in your career. And like, the message is, don't get to the end of your life and have lived someone else's dream. Like, it is so possible to create your dream when you peel back the layers and you do the work, and you literally only get to do it once.
Amen. Well, ladies, thank you very much. I love this whole conversation and all the work you're doing. And I wish you tremendous amounts of success, which I know you will find regardless. So thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your message with everybody. Thank you for all tuning in to Camp Content today. I think I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of the best things about being an adult is you don't have to play the clarinet anymore. And I think sometimes, like, we forget that we build all these rules. Oh, I can't do this because my kids or because my husband or because of this. But those are all just stories you're telling yourself, and you're an adult and you can do anything you want. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I know people have, handicapped children. I mean, the world is full of challenges and reasons why you can't just seamlessly roll into what you want, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And I think if any of this resonated today, like it did for me, I was managing Airbnbs to pay the rent. I mean, I was working myself to the bone, and I'll never forget, I was vacuuming and listening to Tom Bilyeu, and he said, you don't have to do this anymore. And I stopped dead in my tracks, and I paused the podcast, and I cried. And then I just felt so much better because somebody gave me permission to not have to do it anymore. So if that's what you got from this podcast, I hope it is. And I hope you embrace that fully, and then head on over to Conscious Success and sign up for the program and get that coaching in, because these ladies are right. We need more empowered women leading the way and doing things that the women that came before us didn't have the ability to do. It's not that they wouldn't or couldn't. They just literally were not able to. And so it is our job to do that. The world needs us more than ever, right? There's like 18 different examples that I could give you in one news cycle just this morning alone of how much the world needs more empowered, conscious, fully loved and actualized women on the planet. So thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, be excellent to each other. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Camp Content. This is Molly.
And this is Matt.
And we are Heartcast Media, aka Camp Content, and we appreciate all of your support. If you found this content valuable, please comment on social media, LinkedIn, wherever you find us, and we will make sure to comment back.
And be sure to go on and subscribe and like on your favorite platforms, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you name it. Leave us that subscription, leave us that good review.
We'll love you forever. So until next time, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.
Thank you for tuning into Camp Content, hosted by Heartcast Media. We are a digital content agency focused on content marketing for businesses and brands. If you're looking to save time and be more consistent with your marketing and need a little guidance on what to say and how to say it and where to say it, we got your back. Book a discovery call today and let's talk.